So this was pretty much drama-free, would you say?
At the time, there was a cyclone that was hitting Tamil Nadu, which really slowed down our progress. It was not just raining, it was raining cats and dogs. And then another thing happened there, which is that one of the crew members, while getting out of the car, broke the dash cam wire.
Oh, shit.
So the car simply cannot be moved if that dash cam is not fixed. The dash cam, as I told you, is a important evidence for us.
Yeah.
And I forgot to turn on the GPS.
What? So then what happened?
We drove back.
So you drove back?
All the way.
Welcome to the Evo India podcast. Today, we're not doing our regular Cars of the Week podcast, which is why I don't have Sirish in the podcast room with me. Instead, I have Prashant. Prashant, say hi.
Hi, everyone. And hi, Aatish.
Hi. Prashant is our senior correspondent. And the reason he is here today is because we recently did something very, very cool. And he was right at the eye of that storm. We set a Guinness World Record. Prashant, what is the Guinness World Record that we set?
So the Guinness World Record we set was for the greatest altitude change by an electric vehicle.
Right. So that means you take it from a very low place to a very high place, or, which is what we did.
The other way around.
A very high place
to a very low place.
To a very low place.
That's what we did.
Right. So that's the new record we set, and we did it in the Hyundai Ioniq 5. We actually broke a record of a car from China, which was set in China.
It was set in China. It was a Chinese car, and the record was at 5,720 meters.
And what's our new record?
Our new record is 5,802 meters.
Awesome. So we've got officially the new Guinness World Record. It's really a matter of pride to say that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely. It's a matter of pride, and it's also a matter of, a lot of gratefulness, to be honest.
Yeah?
Yeah, because a lot of good things had to come together for this to actually happen.
Absolutely.
It wasn't easy.
I remember Sirish and I were sitting back in the office when we were planning this, and we were like, we need to do something big. He said, let's do something big with Hyundai. I was like, what can we do which is big with Hyundai? And I remember seeing this record we keep trawling the internet for cool shit we can do. And I remember seeing this record, and I knew Umling was a little higher than that record. So even if we got the Hyundai Ioniq from Umling down to sea level, we would have set the new record. But we didn't. We did something even better. We took it under sea level.
Yeah. We made sure that no one else breaks that record.
Yeah. So we've really tried hard to keep this record hard to break. We'll talk about that. But yeah, Prashant, tell us let's just actually run through some quick facts on the record before we dive into what it was like. So how many kilometers did you all do?
There was about 4,956 kilometers to be precise.
And how many days was the record attempt?
The record attempt itself was 14 days from Umling until we reached Kuttanad in Kerala.
But you were in the car for a lot more.
I was in the car for 8 more days, 9 actually, because we started our drive from Delhi.
Yes.
First went to Umling, then went to Kuttanad, and then went back to Kochi as well.
So this was not you taking the Ioniq fully charged in a truck up to Umling. No, you drove up there.
Everything was driven. The car was basically on the road the whole time. Yeah. And I was in it the whole time as well.
And you were driving. Okay, that's pretty cool. So let's start before the record attempt. This is Guinness.
Yeah,
this is a big deal. And Guinness obviously is very thorough with the evaluation. And because of that, we had to really get a lot of prep in place to be able to give them the data they need to evaluate this. This drive, like you said, was 14 days. I don't think it's viable for an adjudicator to be on the drive for 14 days. So what we had to do was be very,
very meticulous.
Very meticulous with our data. Yeah. They asked for a ton of data.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what all you had to do in terms of just data collection so that this was watertight?
So Guinness had given us certain very strict guidelines as to what has to be done for all the documentation. It started with actually this. This is the logbook, which we are still carrying from the run. Has been submitted to Guinness as well.
Sure.
And we still
what's it like on the inside?
All right. So I'll show you this later. But this is basically a record of everything that we did on the trip. Every stop we made, the time we made, the date we made, the amount of charge the car had, the amount of distance we covered, where we made it, what we made it for.
So even if you stopped for chai, you logged it?
Even if we stopped for peeing, we logged it.
Yeah. So every
single thing is in this book. So if somebody wants to know what exactly we did, they can just read through the pages of this.
Yeah, insane.
And so the purpose of this was basically just to understand that, you know, it's like a proof that we actually stopped at these places.
Guinness, and along with this, you had to submit bills.
That's what I was coming to. Guinness actually, what they do is that the bills that we submit, they corroborate with this logbook to see where have we actually stopped. And
so if you stopped at lunch for some dhaba in Punjab, you would have a bill from there and it would have to match in this logbook.
Absolutely. Right. In fact, we went one step further. We sometimes had the owner of the dhaba or the one who was the cashier sign it right here, just to be safe, to be honest. So that was the one thing that we did with respect to the logbook. The next was that we fitted a dash cam to the car, which recorded the entire length of the journey. So I now don't remember how many hours of driving it was, but I do remember it was almost 350 GB of dashcam data that we sent to Guinness, which included some of the mistakes I made where we had to go back. We'll discuss that later. But so the entire 14 days of the journey was there on the dashcam. And third was the witnesses. We needed to have witnesses, so we had 2 witnesses with us who were there for the entirety of the drive. Like you said, Guinness adjudicator cannot be there, so they needed 2 witnesses who filled out these forms, and forms which have all their details, what they did, what they saw, etc., etc.
And these are independent witnesses.
We
can't have witnesses. Say, I can't be on the drive and claim to be a witness.
Nobody associated with Evo, Hyundai, or anybody alike. They just have to be absolutely separate from this, but they needed to have some experience with respect to either driving or knowing about altitude.
They should be from this field.
They should be from the fraternity, nearabouts, have some experience about it, so that, you know, just somebody with absolutely no knowledge is not there on the drive, but they know how this whole drive is working. So we had 2 witnesses for that, and an additional witness just at Kuttanad and at Umling to corroborate that this was what our GPS was saying.
Right.
Which brings me to the GPSs itself. We had 2 GPS devices in the car, Garmin GPSs. One was sealed in a box that we couldn't tamper with, box that was zip tied and everything. The only thing we could do with it was turn it off and on. The idea with Guinness was that they didn't want any tampering with the GPS, and that was the main GPS. That's the files coming out of that GPS is how we proved that that's what our record is. A second GPS was also there in the car, more like a backup, but also for me to actually see, because that box is on the side, I can't always see it. So while driving, I can actually see what the altitude is. And of course we shoot, right? So I can also show it to the camera. So we had 2 GPSs in the car. This was the entire documentation that we had.
So very intensive.
Quite intensive.
Yeah. I mean, I know if it was me on this drive, I would have messed up this logbook in day 1 only, because I'm so forgetful. I would have just forgotten, and then we would have reached Punjab and I'm like, shit, what did we do?
I actually gave the logbook to one of our colleagues for one day and he messed it up. So I took it back and I had this logbook with me entirely. It genuinely required discipline, because you had to fill it up at every stop, every night. We are driving for hours and hours, right? It's easy to forget something like this. So,
and Prashant is a meticulous guy, so I can believe that he figured this stuff out and got it done properly. Now, let's talk about driving EVs in the mountains, because I imagine it can't be easy. First of all, you all were there in the winter. This was done between November and December. Over
I hate you guys for that, to be honest. To be planning this in the winter months to go to Ladakh.
Exactly. So tell us about it. I mean, I couldn't think it'd be easy.
I think there were 2 aspects to it. One was the car itself. And not to forget the support car as well. We had a support car from Hyundai as well, because that was a Hyundai Creta N-Line. Easier because you can refuel it anywhere, but still difficult because we are going through temperatures which actually start ranging from 1 and below.
1 is like maximum.
1 is the maximum we met, which is why the second part is the human element of it. The car's capability, in all honesty, as we realized, was far more than us humans. Physically and mentally, all of us were exhausted, and all of us had to keep it together, to be honest. Once we entered Kashmir. And in fact, there's a small story about
You're
it.
talking going north from Delhi.
We're actually still going north from Delhi.
To try to get to Umlingla.
To try and get to Umlingla. And on our way, we took the Srinagar wala route, not the Manali wala route.
Manali is shut at this time.
The Baralachla pass is closed. Yeah. So when we entered Sonmarg, we were supposed to reach Kargil that day. It started snowing. Now, as you know, Ioniq 5 is a rear-wheel drive car. It started snowing. I was still having fun while driving it, but the notorious Zozela Pass got closed that afternoon.
Yeah. So the army is at the base over there.
Yes.
And they monitor that pass. And if it gets snowed in, they shut it.
They shut it because it's an extremely dangerous pass. It's dangerous when it's not snowing. When it's snowing, it's even more dangerous. But we really wanted to cross that pass that very day because we knew if we get stuck here today, we're going to be stuck here for at least one more day, at least. And we didn't want to do that. So we tried. We went. Like we actually threw some contacts here and there, and we still crossed the barriers that these guys had set up. The purpose was not to break any law or anything like that, but the purpose was that there were very specific vehicles that were still allowed to go. And I think half an hour into the drive, we realized that this is not worth it. The car was sliding all over the place. There was so much snow. It was so cold. We basically just had to turn back. And we got stuck in Sonmarg for 2 days because that pass was then closed. And the temperatures, that was the first tryest with the challenge we had because the temperatures in the night were minus 15 already at the time. And we weren't ready for it, to be honest.
This was not even at altitude. Sonmarg is not that high.
It's not high. It's not as high as we went to. I think brought about some seriousness back in us. That, okay, this is not going to be just a piece of cake. It's going to be a lot of work, lot of staying together, a lot of just believing in each other. And
dig deep.
Yeah, dig deep and be a team and take care of the cars. Eventually, when we did get through the pass, and that too, we started at 6 p.m. because we realized that the pass is open. We started at 6 p.m. Not the best idea because after that time, the temperatures once again enter sub-zero, which means anything on the road, even this much water, would start freezing, which means most of the road was essentially ice. But we had to cross it. We had to get to Kargil. The car was on limited charge. We had to go there and charge the vehicle. We made it. We drove very slowly, very meticulously. I, by mistake, turned on the windshield wiper once and it immediately froze. On the windshield. Spent 10 minutes outside just scraping all the ice off. Some of the adventures had started even before the record run had begun.
Crazy. And then you took it all the way up to Umlingla. So how were you charging in the Ladakh region?
Both Kashmir and Ladakh still are working on their charging networks. Leh, we got a good charger. In fact, I was surprised what we got in Leh. We got a solar-powered 60 kilowatt-hour charger there.
Wow.
Something that the government uses. They actually have a lot of Hyundai Konas there.
Okay.
And we borrowed their charging time for us. Got ourselves fully charged. Otherwise, we were charging in hotels. We would use their 15 ampere socket, use the home charger that we were carrying, a 7 kilowatt hour charger that we were carrying, or we would plonk our charger to an army generator because these areas don't really have chargers and we can't sort of let the car go empty. So army bases, hotels, and this one solar charger that we found is where we charge these cars. Charged the Ioniq, in fact.
And then finally you got to the top of Umlingla and that's where your record started. What was that feeling like?
Tingly, because we had no oxygen.
Umlingla is very high.
It's extremely high.
If you don't know, Umlingla is higher than Everest Base Camp. That's just putting into perspective how high Umlingla Pass is. It's 19,000 and something feet.
It's 19,024 feet. Now I know all the numbers by heart. 5,799 meters if you're metrically inclined. So we weren't just touching Umlingla. Now because we are making a video, we are doing
content,
social media stuff. Yes. We were at the Umlingla Pass for 2 hours.
2 hours? Are you serious?
Sadly, yes.
Man. I've been to Umlingla. I was done in 20 minutes over there. Done means I had a throbbing headache.
Yeah.
I wanted to pass out in the back of the car. I had to drive the car back down. In fact, I don't think I drove the car back down. I passed the car on to one of the other boys. This was back in 2022, I think it was. And I was up there in a Tucson. Yeah.
It's hard enough to just be there regardless of the
Yeah,
vehicle.
yeah.
Because I
And-
think in that moment you don't realize what you're driving. You just...
No, I'm full hats off to you, man. I'm surprised y'all were alive there for 2 hours.
No, frankly, a lot of us felt sick,
But y'all had oxygen with y'all?
which was consumed entirely within the first 5 minutes. So I think 7 or 8 of us were there, including the camera crew.
Yeah.
6 of us were ill.
Wow. Immediately. And this is the start of the trip.
This is just the start of the trip. Because we had been spending too much time, and you know how our camera guys are. They just want to get the best shots, right?
Yes.
So they will run around here and there. They'll make me run around here and there, and
Yeah.
whatever needs to be done. In the ambition of getting great shots, they also dehydrated themselves, and they all
No,
to
you
put
can't
it into-
exert yourself
you
out
can't.
there.
To put it to perspective, Umlingla has just about 15% of the oxygen that we have here right now.
Wow.
That's not what our body is designed for.
I'm not accustomed to it.
Not accustomed to. You have to first spend time in Leh and Hanle for a very long time before you can actually go to Umlingla. But we didn't have the time.
You have luxury of time.
We didn't have that time.
Yeah.
So we started coming down.
Yeah.
That was the actual
Start
beginning of our run.
And let's tell people why we decided to start at the top and not start in, say, Kerala and drive all the way up.
I think that was an easy decision. Primarily because right at the end of the trip, now it's a 14-day journey, you're already exhausted by the end of 14 days. You don't want to be exhausted at Umlingla.
Yeah.
You want to be in the freshest possible state at Umlingla. It's easier to go down than to go up.
Yeah. And I think for the cars also it would make more
And
sense
it makes
because
further sense.
driving uphill consumes a lot of range,
more energy, yeah.
whereas coming downhill you're actually regenerating.
Definitely.
So the risk of running out of charge is much lower coming downhill.
Which actually reminds me, there were certain protocols which Guinness had that you can't push the car, you
Correct.
can't tow the car, the
Yeah.
car cannot run out of charge.
Yeah.
So these protocols basically meant that, it's just easier to do the downhill
Yeah.
route.
Yeah.
We started the run. We thought we will stay at Hanle that evening. We didn't. Even though we had a race against time. Now what happened was, because we spent 2 hours, we started off from Umlingla at 4 p.m.
Wow.
Winter months, which means this daylight ends at 5:30. Now, to get to Umlingla, anybody who's been there will know that you have to cross through an entire empty, vast desert. You don't want to cross that
At dark.
at dark because you will get lost.
Yeah. I've been there. I know.
So,
It's scary enough in the day.
so we basically just raced ourselves. We made it just in the nick of time. As the sun completely vanished, we reached Hanle and charged the car there for a couple of hours at the generator that we had found there in the army base camp, and decided, I still think foolishly, to go to Leh. Because that evening, the temperature outside after 8 p.m. was somewhere about minus 15 degrees. It dropped to minus 19 degrees in another hour. And because we were sort of already critical on range, I did not turn on the heater in the car. The Creta boys were extremely happy because they had a heater, they had fuel.
Yeah.
I was being safe. And inside the car, because there's no engine to generate heat in the car, the car inside was minus 22 degrees.
Wow.
It was about 280, 290 kilometers to Leh, and the range exactly was 290 kilometers on the car. We still did it. I think there was a point in between I couldn't feel my hands and legs, and I think the car was just driving on auto mode. I frankly, there's a section I can't recall how we actually made through that section, but we did. We reached Leh at 2 a.m. and slept.
Unreal. And then I think the rest of the mountains were drama-free for you.
Not entirely. So we, while crossing through Kargil, once again the temperatures were extremely cold. The whole idea of doing this drive was to because we didn't have a time limit, was to ensure that we make it. But we also wanted to be at the next charging stop at every night.
Yeah.
And sadly, at Kargil, when we reached, the charger wasn't working
Oh, okay.
that evening. And we had to basically then figure out something else. We had one of our electricians in the car who helped us out with this thing. Got the car charged. The charging started at about 3 a.m. and I think we charged for 3 hours or something before we started for the next day. So it wasn't trouble-free, but it was still the ongoing adventure that we were going through. But I don't think it was that big a deal because we were coming down. So and by the time I had also learned how to extract range out of this car. It was quite amazing the amount of range this car started giving. More than 8 kilometers per kilowatt.
Wow.
Certain times, which meant the range of this car reached at about 550 at certain points.
So a full charge at 8 kilowatt watts per kilometer would give you 550.
550, sometimes 560. So, which felt quite comfortable.
Yeah, that's definitely comfortable.
Yeah.
And you know, when we're doing shoot days, you're not covering big distances in a day because you're constantly stopping to shoot and all of that. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. 500 kilometers is a lot.
It's massive. It's quite impressive.
Then you got down into the plains.
Plains.
So you came down Srinagar, Jammu, and then you hit Punjab.
We hit Punjab. We stopped by near Ludhiana for the first night. That's where I got overconfident about the range also. And I told the team, I don't need these chargers. We can just cover up on time. Because we had already lost 2 days at Sonmarg and so on and so forth while going up. Luckily, we still found chargers. Now, that's where the charging network really comes up.
Yeah.
You find chargers almost on average every 50 kilometers on these highways.
So as bad as it was in Leh and in Ladakh.
That's how good it became once you entered the plains.
Wow, okay.
And, you know, once we started doing these runs longer, on highways, of course, EVs lose a little bit more range. We started doing about 450 kilometers then for a full charge. But because it was also a risk for it to run out, we never let it go beyond 20%. So we were quite okay with the range for most part.
Right.
Certain parts I got enthusiastic and I was like, let's just push ourselves. At certain points we reached 10%, 5%. Luckily got chargers. But I learned my lesson in the early half. Okay, let's not be so adventurous.
Yeah.
It is a record run after all.
True. So this was pretty much drama-free, would you say, the plains? Because, look, you're back down. There's no more altitude challenges. The winter, sure, it has set in, but it's not unbearable like in the mountains.
Yeah.
You've got your chargers at regular intervals, so you're not worried too much about charging network and range anymore. So it should have been smooth sailing. For most part, the northern plains were quite smooth. Yeah.
I was extremely happy to just get off the 5 layers of jackets that I was wearing.
Yeah.
Most of it was smooth. The trouble, I think, with the next genuine challenge we faced was somewhere around, firstly in Pune.
Really?
Yeah. Because when we reached Pune, the only thing I could think of was going home. And not coming back. It was already 10 days since the record run had started by then.
So 18 days driving.
Yeah. 18 or 19 days of driving, yes. And I was like, hey, I just need my bed. I did actually go home, slept one night, and I had absolutely no intention of coming back the next day. But somehow managed to.
Yeah.
The real challenge actually started somewhere in Karnataka.
Okay.
At the time, there was a cyclone that was hitting Tamil Nadu, which had its effects in Karnataka as well, which really slowed down our progress.
It was raining?
It was not just raining, it was raining cats and dogs to the point that we did not want to, we really had to slow down.
Right.
And also, what that does is it brings out power outages.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't think of that.
I actually forgot to mention, we had a small issue in Udaipur. We stayed for 2 days in Udaipur, primarily because one day there was a power outage.
Oh, damn.
And we could not charge our vehicle that night.
Shit.
So the next day we charged and then we were able to restart our run. Something very similar happened in Karnataka where we could not find, we had to skip 2-3 charges because they simply weren't working because of this cyclone. Eventually, we found one at our overnight hotel in Chikmagalur. That's where we charged. And then another thing happened there, which is that one of the crew members, while getting out of the car, broke the dash cam wire.
Oh, shit.
The dash cam, as I told you, is a important evidence for us.
Yeah.
So the car simply cannot be moved if that dash cam is not fixed. We had to get a new wire. We were just hoping that the port of the dash cam was not broken. Luckily, it wasn't, but it still lost us a crucial amount of time.
So what? While they were getting out, it got caught in their.
It just got caught in their leg, and see, this is what fatigue does.
Yeah.
You start forgetting these small things, and it just got caught in his leg, and as he moved out, it just snapped, and it snapped into two. Like it couldn't even be fixed. So we had to get a new wire. The next thing that happened, while we were going towards Bandipur, we stopped for a refueling of our support car, the Creta, and I forgot to turn on the GPS. So we have to turn on the GPS every single time we stop, because when you turn off the car, the GPS will also turn off. And we drove on for almost 1.5 to 2 hours. And I realized that right in the midst of the Bandipur reserve, we had one of our witnesses in the car, Reshma, and she suddenly shouted that, why is this car so dark? And we realized that the GPS lights weren't on.
Oh, so you all had gotten accustomed
We had gotten accustomed. Our eyes were accustomed to having certain lights. But that night was such a hectic driving that I just completely focused on the road and had no awareness of the GPS at all.
Yeah. So then what happened?
We drove back.
So you drove back?
All the way 2 hours.
2 hours back. Okay.
And
just to turn on the
just
GPS.
to turn on the GPS.
And start again.
If it were a 5-10 minute gap, we could have explained it.
Yeah.
A 2 hour gap was unexplainable. On a GPS, on a record run, we couldn't have messed it up. And Guinness is like this, so meticulous. We couldn't have given excuses. So we had to go back. Lost us once again a lot of time and crucially charge. Which then brought about another problem. Now, anybody living in Tamil Nadu or Karnataka would know that Bandipur crossing stops at 9:30 p.m. At the max 10 p.m. Now, we had driven back about 1.5 hours, and we had to reach back in an hour to be able to make it. And it was raining. So we still managed to reach, caught some wildlife on the way. Wild elephants, deer. One gore chased us.
Sightings, no, you didn't catch them.
Luckily, we didn't catch them. Now that they catch us, but yes, we had sightings of them. Pardon my English. We even had a gore who chased us. It's in the video. Do watch that. So, and then that night I was hoping to enter Kerala. We didn't. We just reached Thorapalli and we stopped that night. So our journey got delayed by another 2 days. And then it was trouble-free till Kerala.
Okay. So then you finally reached Kerala.
We finally did.
So where was this was the lowest point you all were looking for?
Now we were looking for the lowest point. So we knew Kuttanad is the lowest point in India. The rice paddy fields there lie anywhere between -1 and -4 meters below the sea level. We can't drive on those paddy fields. Correct. So we still have to find where is the lowest point that we can take the car to. At Kuttanad, I think we searched for about 3 hours.
Fuck, okay.
Because we were getting 0, we were getting -1, but we were ambitious. I was like, I want to cross 5,800, that mark. And we finally found the lowest point next to somebody's house.
Okay.
So we were basically trying to convince villagers that let us just park the car here for 5 minutes. Let the read this. Let me do my camera bit so that we can come out. The villagers were quite helpful. They actually they joined us and started looking for the lowest point where the car could go. So it became quite a communal thing there. And quite a fun day, quite a fun adventure. Yeah. Tired as hell. Yeah, everybody was fatigued. Everybody was like, we just have to get this done and go home.
And it's not like we swapped out drivers and we took stains. So you drove the whole thing.
Yeah, I drove the whole thing. And it's not just me. The witnesses were there for the entire drive. Yeah. The camera crew was there for the entire drive. So and I think as a driver, I'm still okay because my mind is engaged in driving. The people who are sitting doing nothing, I think it's even harder for them.
Yeah.
not doing anything is much harder. For an entire day, you get out, you shoot for, let's say, a total of 2 hours a day, and rest you're just in the car along for the ride. So I think hats off to everybody on this journey.
Phenomenal.
All 7-8 people.
And then you got back home and slept for 3 days.
I wish I could have slept for 3 days, but then we needed to submit all of this to Guinness.
So then you were put onto data management.
I essentially just started compiling everything.
And nobody else would have been able to do it also. You only had to do it.
No one. That's the sad part about this. because I was there in the entire drive, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew exactly everything that was on the dash cam. What points of the GPS I need to take out. The entire KM. So Guinness requires a KML file. The GPS gives a GPX file. The conversion is not easy. For conversion also, you have to see whether the file has completely been extracted and has the complete route been mapped. Is the elevations mapped as the way that we have seen it on the GPS? So there were a lot of things computationally that we had to do before submitting everything to Guinness. And then eventually we did.
And then we had the record presentation at the Hyundai office in Gurgaon. So the adjudicator from Guinness was there, Mr. Rishi Nath.
Yeah.
Along with us was the MD of Hyundai India, Mr. Unsu Kim. And there was you, Sirish, and a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
Mr. Tarun Garg was there.
Yeah.
And we had the whole record presentation, which was very special. I mean, I've grown up seeing these Guinness World Record things on TV. You see them all over the place.
Totally.
And
I used to see them on AXN.
Yeah, exactly. And then you see the record in the flesh with the organization that you work for, that name on it. It hits home.
I think...
did it feel worth it? Did all that trouble feel worth it at that point?
I mean, when I entered the Hyundai office, we went to the area where the presentation was. The car was standing there with the backdrop and everything. I think I was the first one to arrive along with one more camera person there. I saw the car and I just became slightly emotional. Because
I can imagine.
I had a slight tear in my eye because I had a very fast flashback of those entire 24 days of my drive.
Hard 24 days.
Yeah. And frankly, I loved the car so much because that Ioniq 5, it's a winner.
Yeah.
It's you've driven it, right?
I love the car.
It's a lovely car.
Yeah.
It's not just about the fact that it helped us achieve this run, but the fact that I enjoyed it throughout.
Yeah.
I was actually reluctant giving other people the driving. One, because of course I knew the best by now how to extract the range, but because I was enjoying it so much. The car was me, I was the car. That essentially was that feeling that I had, and the moment when I entered that office, when I saw the Guinness certificate for the first time, it was overwhelming. My hair was standing at the time, and while all the presentation was going on, when the first round of certification, and Rishi Nath said very wonderful words, which is also right at the end of our video. In those words, he also mentioned very specifically that they have achieved something truly amazing, or something like that.
Yeah.
It was then that it hit me. While you're doing these things, you're just doing it.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
It was then that it hit me that, okay, maybe we have just done something that's not easy. That's quite a feat, to be honest.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah, so that was a very cool moment.
And I get what you're saying. Like when you do something this hard with a car, you form an emotional bond with it.
You definitely.
I feel that with an XUV 700 because we set the record back in 2020, late 2020 or 21 with the XUV 700. And the car it has its flaws, it has its pros, it's a nice car, but you feel a special connection to it, which nobody can take away from you. You cannot explain. It's completely irrational. It's completely on a temporal level, but it's a beautiful feeling.
It is. Like, I won't say that the Ioniq was perfect throughout the run. Some things did go wrong with the car. Nothing that stopped our run, but like the USB ports packed up in high altitude, the boot developed a mind of its own because probably icicles were stuck inside it.
Yeah, water. And
small things kept on happening, but boy, that car is such an amazing thing to drive.
And it's such a, you don't realize that it's a big car.
It's a big car,
So
but
it has a lot of space.
It has so much space.
And because of that, you're very comfortable on drives like this. Power delivery is phenomenal.
Insane.
Yeah, ride quality is damn good. It's very comfortable.
And Aatish, I don't know which all EVs you have driven at Umlingla.
None.
Okay, but because there's no oxygen, ICE cars struggle there.
Yeah.
This is the first time I experienced full 214 horsepower of a car at that height.
Yeah.
I am telling you, my body was not ready for it.
True.
Because I couldn't fathom how fast this car is able to still go at that altitude.
Phenomenal.
That's how good that car is.
Anyway, you wanted to say something about charging infrastructure as well.
Yes. Now, the whole idea of this entire journey was not just to set a world record, but also just to prove to ourselves and as well as journalists, give a honest review to people about what the charging network of the country is like.
Yeah. To demonstrate that this is possible in India.
Firstly, it is possible because we made it.
Yeah.
Secondly, I would say that it's still hard. It's not that you have a fuel pump every 2 kilometers. The mountains are still an issue, definitely. Himachal, I already know. Ladakh and Kashmir, the charging network is still coming up there. The other thing is that sometimes some chargers work, some don't work. So you have to always keep a reserve with you on the charge. You can't sort of go 5% and start searching for a charger. Then you also have this issue that I by now have 17 apps on my phone for different charging.
Yeah, that's annoying.
That's genuinely annoying because unless it gets centralized, every app has its own UI.
Forget centralized. This is what I wrote in my column last month. I said, why can't we go to a EV charger, tap your card like you tap at a fuel pump and get out of there?
Exactly. You can actually, you should have a QR code scanner where you can pay right there and then the charging starts because we have so much technology. India is leading in UPI. There are ways. I'm sure that
they
can
just
be
want
done.
your data and they're going to do what they can to get it.
And every app requires you to register, which I'm waiting for 10 minutes, entering my name, car details, etc., payment details. It's very annoying. Yeah. And sometimes then the chargers connect, sometimes it doesn't connect, sometimes you have to call the toll-free number that's there. So there are times this thing gets annoyed, and I think this infrastructure, while it's still coming up, it's so nascent that people are still realizing, even companies are realizing what's the best way to go around it. Yeah. I don't think these should be a problem in the next 5-10 years, but today they are.
Yeah. No, but look, EVs are very nascent technology, like you said, and people are figuring things out. I think it's wonderful that you can still today, through mainland India, find a charger everywhere.
Essentially everywhere.
So I think that's worth celebrating. Yeah. And also it allows us to do stuff like this. Now imagine if you didn't have those chargers, however annoying the apps were, if you didn't have them, we couldn't do this.
Nothing would happen.
You wouldn't have a world record.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a world record.
So whatever said and done, the network exists.
It exists.
It may be slightly flawed. There may be bugs and issues.
But it's improving.
Yeah.
Because there were chargers that were still just ready to be set up, which we saw on the way to make it easier. We found chargers in the middle of villages. Right outside a panwala stall, there was a Zobolt 60 kilowatt charger. I was like, wow.
Yeah. Unbelievable. That's the beauty of India.
That is.
The dichotomies exist.
It's basically that as long as there is a customer demand, companies will make it happen because that's how big our market is.
True. Anyway, I want to congratulate you once again for all the effort and all of the blood, sweat and tears you put into these, whatever, almost a month you were working on it. Yeah. And
still am.
Still are. In fact, right now also we were getting calls, Hyundai figuring things out. Yeah. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I think it's a phenomenal achievement. This is Evo India's first Guinness World Record, but hopefully not the last. I hope we get to do more of these because there is a high to be at the top of the world, literally and figuratively.
I think a lot more people of our team should experience it because it's a different feeling. And I have to thank you and Sirish for giving me the opportunity to do this and just trusting me to make this happen.
Yeah, our pleasure. And you delivered. So
Thank
good job. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. This was a special episode of the Evo India podcast where we took you behind the scenes into our Guinness World Record. You don't get to do something like this every day. And we just felt that you should you've seen the video, you've read the story, you've seen the social media content, but this sort of depth and insight from the man who was there throughout is really special. Some of the stuff that I heard today was also new for me. The first time I'm hearing it. So thanks, Prashant, for sharing.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on the Evo India podcast.